How do I know it started?
You'll be live soon,
Oh,
Nathan.
okay,
I'll
cool.
let you know. It has started. You're now live.
Better late than never. I am here. Can everybody hear me? Just can I be heard and seen? Maybe. All right, broadcast is live. Great. Well, thanks for waiting, everybody. We had a little bit of technical difficulties there, but I promise this is going to be so worth your while. So let me share my screen here. I've got a presentation that I put together. Make sure I do this right. So actually, as we get started, what I did was we have a poll option, and I am going to, let's see if that works. Okay, well, that's attempting to work. I hope that works. I'm going to start a poll because it's, this is different for me, and I've done these before. I've been able to like show of hands, which is fun. So I'm going to start a poll here. I just, boom, launched it just to get an idea of what everybody does, what your role is. And, so that kind of gives me a feel for what to expect. Now, I tried to share my screen, but that didn't work. Tanuja, should I do share screen or share a file? Oh, never mind. There it is. Okay, I lied. So, crap, where'd it go? It was there, and now it was gone. Let me try again. Share a file. Okay, open. Maybe I was impatient and I started clicking too much. Boy. Okay, we'll wait for that to load up. So, yeah, check out the poll. Answer the poll. Here, I'll put me down. Boom, there's me. Great. Those of you who haven't done the poll, keep doing it. And then once my presentation shows up, there it is, on demand, we'll get started. So thanks, everybody, for joining product management versus product marketing. Exactly the same, yet totally different. I see we have a lot of product management, a lot of others. I was surprised in the others. Maybe if you were an other, maybe you can put in the chat and say like what other is. Like, are you a professional athlete? Are you a airplane pilot? Like, I don't know. So that'd be interesting to know as well. So let's get rolling. Before we start, I want to thank our sponsors, the 280 Group. I think they're a great resource for education, both self-trained online through their library of resources and also through their training program. So 280 Group, check them out. And then also Product Tank. It's really weird. So I'm like the co-founder of Product Tank Pittsburgh, and I am sponsoring my own session here. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but so we're a meetup in Pittsburgh. We're affiliated with Mind the Product. So those of you who don't know what Mind the Product is, it's a great resource for product information. Product in Pittsburgh, we're a meetup. We kind of took the summer off because of COVID and virtual events, but we're actually going to start getting kicked up here in the next couple of weeks. So fantastic. So thank you to our sponsors. We couldn't do it without them. And it looks like we got about half product managers. Okay, cool. So let's keep rolling. So a little bit about me. I've been working for 20 years, mostly in the medical healthcare type space. A lot of healthcare IT. That's what I'm doing currently now. A lot of time in medical devices, personal protection devices, and even industrial manufacturing. I've done a lot of different roles, and I'll kind of get into that as we talk here. But part of what I've done is product manager. I'm currently in product marketing at a startup out of Boston. I've worked in implementation, project management's where I have my foundation, and even like right now, I'm even sales ops. I'm responsible for that as well. I'm a plastics engineer. I went to Pitt and got an MBA, and then I do a lot of other extracurricular things down below that are product related as well. So with that, I'm going to get started into the bones of the presentation here. These are my notes. I'll be throwing these on the floor as we go through. But if you have a question, there is a Q&A section. I love questions. I love questions when we're live and I can see you raise your hand and say, I have a question. I love calling on people, which I can't do in this format. So if you have questions as it comes up, maybe we'll take little breaks here and there if I see the question queue getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if not, I'll hit questions at the end. So without further ado, first slide. So let's start with an easy question, right? Imagine your job is to bring life-changing products to market. Would you describe yourself as a product manager, or a product marketer? So now this is the part of the presentation where I would say, what do you guys think? And I'd ask for a show of hands. But since I can't do that, I'm going to start another poll. Oops. Huh. Oh, so both polls are already open? Oh, cool. So I didn't realize the second poll was already open. So there you go. So there's another poll there, and a lot of you have already responded to it. So that worked out great. And showing me that about 70% of you say that you would classify yourselves as a product manager, and 30% would classify themselves as a product marketer. So very interesting. And I mean, the reality is that both answers are technically correct, right? Both functions are ultimately responsible for bringing products to market. It all depends on the role they play within the organization as to who does it, as to what part of that process you play. And so, you know, I've been in product for a while, and talking to colleagues and whatnot, we have this discussion of like, well, product management, product marketing, like what's the difference, and how do you hire a good product manager versus hiring a good product marketer? And I've often said that, you know, someone who's a really great product manager, like for me, like a great product manager, shouldn't put my hand like that. A great product manager is someone who really looks at the value that's being created for the end user. Like to me, like that's paramount. Value. What value do I create? What problem I'm solving to create value? That's what a product manager does. On the same side, a product marketer is thinking, what is the value we're creating, and how do we best express that value to users, to the market, to ultimately create a success? And so to do that, you have to understand the problems that the people are having. So with that background and how I look at it, my approach to it, I'm a firm believer that if you're a great product manager, you can be a great product marketer. And if you're a great product marketer, you can be a great product manager. And it really comes down to, it's more of a thing of technology versus commercial focus, like more of a tech focus, more of a solution focus versus a commercial focus. Or also even like, how do you want to grow your career? And we'll get into that a little bit later. Like, you know, do you want to go deep or do you want to go broad? So, you know, when I look at this topic and I talk to people about it, I kind of start with that, because it's like, you know, I think so many people have this like singular view of, I'm a product guy or gal, and I'm only going to be a product manager. And I think it's bigger than that. And it really, you know, comes down to how you split it. So with that, let's go to the next part here. So Pragmatic Institute, they're actually one of the sponsors for Product Camp. And, you know, this is how they broadly define it, right? So what's so the product managers, they're on the left, and they're the ones like, hey, let's listen to the market. What are they saying? And how do we do it, you know? And then the marketing side is on the right, saying, hey, everybody, here's what this product does, and here's the value, and here's the benefits, and blah, blah, blah. And so it's interesting, though, you know, like if you think like to your organization, like, is this how things are split? Do you have people in these strategy roles that wear suits and they have like nice haircuts and they're just like strategizing all day? And then you got like a little nerdy guy with the glasses below, like, oh, I write all the requirements and that's what I do all day. And this is my silo. And then is your marketing function like a big function? Like one disagreement I have, sorry, Pragmatic Institute, is like they've lumped marketing as this big thing. And like as a product marketer or someone who does product marketing, because I think broadly I would class myself as a product person, but like when you look at this top quadrant, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm circling like this top marketing plan, customer acquisition and retention, and program effectiveness, like that gets into like Marcom or lead generation. So it's like, okay, like I get it. And then what's interesting here is all the overlaps. Like, so who really is responsible for buyer personas? Who really is responsible for the use cases? Who really is responsible for understanding how the portfolio is structured? So it's not, you know, you all know as well as I know, like you don't just sit in your cube or in your office saying, okay, like, well, what deliverable will I work on today? I'm the strategy guy, so I will work on market definition. Like, it just doesn't work that way. So I think this is a good framework to like understand how the responsibilities are split, but it's bigger than that. It's deeper than that is maybe a better way of saying that. So moving right along here, another note on the floor. So, so who does what? Everybody wants to know who does what, because ultimately, if you want to be a product marketer versus a product manager, you're trying to make that decision. You're like, well, what do I do and who does what? So, the reality is it's not black and white. And the person who owns it, the owner doesn't matter if the process isn't working, right? So like, and the process not working can be driven down to capabilities. So when, some of us are product leaders and we have teams that report to us or whatever, and we, it's like, oh, who can we put on such and such project? And you go through your bench strength. You think, well, I could give it to Sally, but she's not real strong in that area. I could give it to Rick, but Rick's really not, like, he's strong in this area, but he's not so, but he doesn't have maybe the domain expertise. And it really comes down to building your team, like a sports team, right? Like, how do I build my team using the skill sets that I have? And also, who has the time to do it, right? Because ultimately, we're not sitting in silos looking at boxes that have deliverable names and writing documents. Nobody writes with paper anymore, paper and pencil. But I actually see a lot of orgs struggle with this. Like, how do we, because no one's ever like, we have too many resources. We just have too many people and not enough projects. Or too many people and not enough work. Like those conversations don't happen. It's always like, oh my gosh, we want to do 10 projects, but we don't have enough people to do that. And so it becomes this constant struggle of, it's like a chess game. Like, how do we best use our resources to effectively get things done? And that's where you have this like crossover of responsibilities. And you don't see it just in product management and product marketing. You see it everywhere, right? Like, I think PMs often find themselves in positions where they're unsure as to like where they stop and where the business analyst takes over. Or even like UX. How far does UX designers go? Do UX designers go for that handoff to the front end design developers? Or like even like we talked about Marcom earlier, like between product marketing and like the lead gen marketing team, who owns that go-to-market strategy? And where is that handoff? And it's not clear. It shouldn't be clear because it all depends on, again, the organization and the skill sets you have and the time that you can allocate to it, right? So moving to the next slide. So ultimately, the communication is number one. And as a product person, whether you're in product marketing or you're in product management, like these are cross-functional leadership roles. And I don't know that everybody looks at them that way, but they are. So a couple of years ago, I went to the Mind the Product conference in San Francisco. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to learn how to be an even better product manager because I was pretty good, but I was like, I could always be better. A little bit of humor. If we don't have humor, these sessions are boring, so bear with me. And so I went and I'm like, okay, it was really like, if you've never gone to a Mind the Product session, you should go because they're great. Like they're just phenomenal sessions. And so I went there and there was, I forget how they had structured. Maybe we'll say there were 10 speeches. And I'm telling you, like, there were at least 50% of them were about leadership. So, and about 50% were about like good product management process and skills and whatnot. And I thought, like, this is really interesting because I always viewed product management as a leadership role. But here's this conference with like these big names in product, like the one that I always remember is like Ken Norton from Google was like the first speaker. Kind of looks like me, but he's a better product person than I am. Or at least most people would say so because he's from Google. But like it was really eye-opening to me that it's really about this cross-functional leadership. So with that, regardless of what role you're in, that's where they're so different. So product management, leading the engineering teams, in the operations team, in the services team, and the product marketing team to say, look, this is the problem we're trying to solve. This is how the user this is what they're doing now. This is how it will change what they do. This is how the solution works. This is how we implement it. This is how we service it, right? So driving that knowledge of the problem to be solved through the organization or a part of the organization. And then on the flip side, the product marketer grabs that and they said, okay, so now like I need to take this, I need to take the value and put a commercial focus to it so that our customers and our sales team and our Marcom teams and the training groups and the channel partners all understand the value that this product creates. Because if no one understands the value of it and the problem that's being solved, no one's going to buy it. It's so, and I have a story about that, which we'll get into a little bit later too. You just, you go to a meeting and you talk to somebody about it and they're like, oh, I'm confused. And it's not abstract, right? Like think about yourself as a consumer. Like how often do you view something and say, like view a product or hear a pitch or watch a commercial or whatever it might be. And you go, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't get it. Right. And so like that communication is key. Because if you're always planning by yourself and not really communicating well, people make up what they think it is. Like sales will sell what they think it is, which can be bad at times. So we got to keep them, but also the company on rails. So communication, number one, similarity. So number two, and if there's some looking at, I love the chat. I wish I could talk in chat and I can't. And I need to, maybe I should work on that. But I love the chat. I'm kind of looking and I'm seeing some activity over there. So as long as people don't say, this is lame, we don't like Nate, let's go check out another session. Keep the chats coming, everybody. And if you have questions for me, I don't see any questions in the Q&A. So if you have questions, please, don't be afraid to put a question there. All right, so number two. So the next thing I want to talk about is like planning. So nothing happens without a plan, right? So I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation that I came up as a project manager. So like planning is kind of like natural for me, at least in the work world. My wife always like gives me grief. She's like, you never want to plan anything. That's how she talks. And I'm like, well, I spend my whole day planning. So in the home world, I just want to like chill. I don't want to be planning all the time. So, but for me, like, as a project manager at heart, like that's where I came up as, I feel like I'm like the first one to say, okay, let's get a meeting together to figure this out. Or first one, I'm like, okay, I'm taking action items, everybody, telling everybody what to do. And then even like, okay, here's the minutes from the meeting. Like that's natural to me. I've actually found that it's not so natural for both product managers and product marketers. They kind of struggle with that. That comes back to the leadership side too. Excuse me. But the reality is, whether you're a product manager or a product planner, if you're not planning, this is my opinion, if you're not planning, you're scrambling, right? You're just you're reacting to the fire of the day. Or even, and this is, again, this isn't about dogging salesmen, because we know how salespeople are. And the good ones are needy. However, if they can, as a product marketer, they could have you basically being their personal assistant if you don't have a plan for your work. Like they'll have you thrashing all over the organization to serve them, which you don't want to do. Not because they're bad people, because they're not. They're great people. They make ultimately the companies win. But if you don't have a plan, you're going to miss things, and ultimately the product will suffer. On the product management side, you're not going to have the right product, and on the go-to-market side, it won't be positioned right, et cetera, et cetera. So, the key element to both positions, right? So on the products that we all know about, the roadmap and the user stories, and it's not just, there's a lot of work that goes into that. And then that comes in back to that communication element, informing people of your roadmap. And here's where we are, and here's where we're going to go. And the user stories, like getting in deep, like it's not, user stories aren't throw them over the wall. It's like, let's really think this out, get to the right level with the right explanation and how we build this product out. I don't need to go through all of those, but on the go-to-market side, like sitting down and like, how are we messaging this in the most compelling way? And working with others though, again, you're not sitting at your desk, like figuring this out on your own. Testing the messaging with different internal and external stakeholders. The keynote speech, which I sad to say I missed part of it because it was breakfast time for the family, so I had to help with breakfast. But positioning is so important. And, I think about that, like how many companies are like, how often do you see like best in breed products that aren't positioned right, that aren't positioned as well as in, maybe not best in breed. And it's the ones that are positioned better are the ones that actually succeed. And so being responsible for that positioning that ultimately drives success is huge for the success of the product. And then building the collateral, like collateral is a tough thing to do because it's taking that messaging, it's taking that positioning, and it's putting it down formally. Here's our sales presentation. Here's some data sheets. Here's a white paper, blogs, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's not just people sitting around writing things. And that's, often like in a company where you don't have infinite resources, people say like, well, can somebody help you do that? And if you have your messaging figured out and you have your positioning straight, you can actually leverage other people in the organization to write some of this collateral. If you don't, it's all on you. So I think it's an interesting thought. It's all about that planning. So moving along, because I don't want to go over. I think we have to finish by 11, and I want to definitely. Oh, there's one question. So let me get through this part of it, and then we'll go to a question here. All right. So here's the last part of this: is everybody wants to be strategic. Everybody. Like I've interviewed a lot of product managers and a lot of product marketers, right? And that first question I always say is, well, if they're not in the role yet and want to get, so why do you want to be a product manager, or why do you want to be a product marketer? They go, well, I want to be strategic. And I'm kind of like, okay, great. But what does that mean? Right? Because saying I want to be strategic, like you can be a strategic sales operations person. You could be a strategic engineering manager. You can be a strategic finance person, right? So why product, whether it be product marketing or product management? So it's interesting with that perspective. And I'll be honest, I don't really get great answers to that one. But what I am seeing in the world of product, especially software companies, is you have these product managers that are great product managers. But I see them so embedded in the technology. Like, and I'm not picking on anybody. It's just the way things are going. Like you look at Google. I think to be a product manager at Google or Uber, you need to have been an engineer, right? And so it's interesting that like those are requirements, but it's also like people, you just see the engineers get excited. Oh, we're using this technology. It's AI, it's machine learning, it's, all this stuff. And I feel like product managers at some point are losing sight of I want to say like the more micro problem being solved. Like the macro problem is sometimes easy, right? Like this, we're going to, in the world I work in, we're going to reduce length of stay for inpatients in a hospital. Yeah, but how do we narrow that down? Like what's the more specific value that we're creating? And I think it's in that area for these people that want to be strategic. I think it's in that area where the product marketer there's a huge growth opportunity there, because they become the ones that oftentimes are trying to figure out what is the actual value of this solution, of this product, of this service even. And how do they figure that out? Well, they work with the internal teams, but they work with the end users. And they're saying, okay, this is really what it's doing. Okay, great. And then they take that back around. So it doesn't happen in a silo. They don't just say, well, I've just repositioned the product, now it does this. But their feedback becomes so beneficial to the product teams. And it becomes like a joint ownership of product strategy. So if we go back to the pragmatic framework, where the guy wears the suit and he's like the strategy guy, because I think he was looking this way. Like, I don't know that model exists in that way as much anymore. It's really this like collective. And it's even like, I see some slagging of sales over there, tell them what to sell, or I don't know. I can't quickly read it all. I was just say slagging, but we all have opinions on that. Sales is a great feedback source for how your message is resonating. And it's not like, we've all had the calls from sales like, hey, if it just did this, I could close this deal. And we hate those calls. Like those are the worst calls. But when they come to you and say, this message they're not getting it. Like I'm pitching what you're saying and they're not getting it. That's eye-opening. And so for where I'm at, my current company, here's a real example. We were working with a prospect. We gave them 4 demos. 4. Now, granted, through COVID, it's all remote, so engagement's tough, as we're seeing here. I can't see any of you smiling faces, but engagement's tough. But 4 demos, you would think this CEO of a health system, after 4 demos, would understand what we were pushing. And he just said, guys, you've been in here 4 times. I don't get it. And so we came back and I said, okay, like what are they, like what are we trying to do here? And we realized that what we were pushing did not meet what this guy's expectations were. So it's all great. So then we said, does it fit is what he wants to do, does it fit our strategy? And the answer is absolutely yes. So I said, well, what if we positioned it as this type of workflow? Product doesn't do it yet, but it could. That's where it gets a little squirrely. But in software world, with a long sales cycle, you have time to make it right. And so I met with the product team. I said, look, this is what we're hearing. What we thought would resonate isn't resonating. This is what they want to do. And they said, yes, that's what the product should do. Let's get it on the roadmap and let's build that out. So it's pretty awesome. So it's not this, I go back to that framework of pragmatic, and it's not wrong, but it's such an evolution. And in the software world, where software can be churned out like that, with longer sales cycles in B2B, it's pretty powerful to be able to message ahead of where the technology is. It's not vaporware, it's not slideware. You have to back it up. But to be able to message ahead is pretty awesome. All right, so we're getting to the end here, right? So you're sitting there and you're saying, all right, Nate, yeah. Communication and planning and whatever the last one was, strategy sharing. Can we just have a side by side of what the 2 roles do? Can we just have that so I can be more informed about these 2 functions? So here you go. So product management, what do? Create and define new products and features. They listen to customers to understand their problems. They take that information and put it into a roadmap, and they lead teams to build it. Product marketing, bring new products and features to market. There's a little bit of a playoff there, which is good. Understand the customer's functional and emotional needs. Kind of feels like the first one on the product side. Understanding how it's being used and the value created by it. Kind of feeds off of the other one, how that roadmap is built based on the customer need. And then distill it together in a strategy that positions it for success. Kind of plays off the other one. You do your part, I'll do mine. And ultimately, all of this is synthesized and communicated to the organization to create customer or product success. So you see what I did? I split them and then I brought them back together, because that, in my opinion, is the true interplay between the 2 roles. So my last slide, and I see there's 2 questions now, so we'll just hit those at the end and I'm done here. First takeaway is both are highly strategic, right? And I think I've kind of hit that home. If you think that a product manager is the most strategic person, you're wrong. Go to market strategy, in some ways, we talked about this a little bit earlier, is more important for the success of the product, right? Like, and there's tons of examples, like one I'll put out there of where, the better solution wasn't the market leader. So those of you I'm 42 now, getting old. So those of you who grew up with the VHS cassette tapes like I did, you had to rewind. It was annoying. There was another technology called Betamax that came out around the same time. And if anybody tells you, that anybody who knows Betamax will tell you, it was by far the superior technology. But their go-to-market and their distribute, like the way they went to market was not as successful as the VHS tape. And so VHS won, hands down. And even like Mac versus PC is kind of an interesting one too. So you look at, like, at home, I use Mac. And the reason I switched to Mac is I got tired of chasing viruses down all the time. No matter how updated my system was, my antivirus software was, I was always chasing down viruses. I said, screw it, I'm just going to get a Mac. I haven't had a, knock on wood, a virus issue in 12 years, knock on wood. But PC, for whatever reason, their go-to-market, their plan was different than Mac. And they took on, I mean, like every business in the United States almost is using PC. So that go to market, hugely important. How you position, hugely important. That doesn't mean Mac's a failure. They segmented differently, and they're a huge success too. The iPod really drove a lot, and the iPhones, like that really drove a lot of people to Mac to kind of bring them back up in the early 2000s, late 2000s, 2008, 8-ish, 7-ish. There's a lot of overlap, as we talked about. You know, you get in, like, go back to the pragmatic framework, the circles kind of overlap, as they should. The responsibilities really depend on the capabilities of the organization. To this day, I haven't been a project manager for years. And people know it's like a skill set of mine. So I'm always asked, hey, can you run this project? Because we just, we need some leadership on it. Dang, leadership. We need leadership on it, and we think you do a good job. So, okay, great. You need to do, so if you're looking, there's some people, look at the roles, not everyone's in one or the other. You need to do your research on what the company's looking for in the position. If you're looking for a new job, or you're looking to grow within your company, depth is great. Like if you're a product person, you might say, I want to be a product person forever. That's great. Like I think that's good. Depth is great. But I also think that breadth is super important. And so, do your research on what the company's looking for and say, is that actually a way I can stretch myself? And if I do product marketing, or if I'm a product marketer and I think I could be a product manager, does that make me better? Because ultimately I think that, again, I said depth is great, but in leadership, I think breadth can be like a secret weapon. And it unlocks opportunities that you never would have considered. Like for me, speaking from experience, like where I'm at now, I'm responsible for pricing and packaging. So great. So with that, it's like, okay, we're a small company. Like, hey, who's going to build the quoting tool? All right. So I did it, right? Okay, here's sales guys, use the quoting tool. Well, how well did that go? Not very well, right? It was kind of a disaster. So they said, okay, Nate, we want to centralize quoting under you. Okay, great. Well, here's your number. Oh, well, who's going to write up the proposal? Because sales guys aren't going to do that. Okay, well, here's your proposal. And then they said, wow, Nate, we really overloaded you, haven't we? And I was like, yes, you have. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to take on sales operations now. And so hire somebody to be your sales ops manager and offload some of this. So for me, it became a great growth opportunity to do something different. I would have never thought like, oh, sales ops is the way I want to go. But like, it's totally opened my eyes to a different area of the business. So it's been great. And the other thing I'll challenge the group with here, if you're a product manager and you have this opinion of like, I'm a product manager, I'm going to be a product manager forever. I don't think it's a bad opinion at all. But do you see people, I think there's actually something you need, like those types need to constantly challenge themselves on what type of, am I on the same product forever? And am I going to be the product manager on the Gen 2 of current product? And is that actually what's best for the company? So always like challenging yourself and learning more and trying to expand. So I'll leave you with those thoughts there. And then with that, I'm going to head over to the Q&A, and we've got 3 great questions. So let's just see what we got here. All my papers are on the floor, which means I'm done. So I will actually say the name of the person who said it. So Jessica McLean says, if there's time at the end, can you please put the slide back up with the side-by-side differences where you bring them back together? Check. Rohit Cambly. Hopefully I said that right, Rohit. How do you have continuous feedback from marketing looped into your planning and development iteratively? How do you have continuous feedback from marketing looped into your planning? Okay, so this is simple, but it's super hard. It all comes down, and I actually did a presentation last year at Product Camp about the enhancement request process, because anybody who works in product knows the enhancement request process is a nightmare. Like no one likes it. Very few do it well. It's kind of a disaster. The goal here is communication. There he goes. And planning. There he goes. And strategy. He hit all 3 of them. That's the answer. I could go in deeper, and I did an hour on it last year. But it's really about communicating what the plan is and getting feedback from others about that plan. It's about writing the plan down And that's not like, oh, I plan in Jira. If you plan in Jira, you're doing the wrong thing. Well, I have a roadmap. Yeah, but your roadmap is typically going to be now, next, later. In an agile, fast developing software world, now, next, later could be like the next 3 to 4 months. There's really there's this concept of, I forget what, what do I call it? I don't remember what the deliverable is. Hit me up later, I'll tell you. I can't believe I lost it's like a bigger roadmap. Right now, we're focused on delivering, I'm going to say it, this value. And that could be like several chunks on the roadmap. And once we deliver that chunk of value, it leads me to developing this next chunk of value and that next chunk. And so it's actively planning and communicating and being open to feedback on those things. So that's how I would say you do it. Hope that answered your question, Rohit. And then the last one we have from Sarah Mitchell is, Rohit. Oh, so that was dismissed. Thank you, Tanuja, for doing that for me. Last one by Sarah Mitchell would be, when would you bring product marketing to the product planning strategy? When would you bring in product marketing to the product planning strategy? As early as possible. This is a problem that most organizations have. They wait until it's like, okay, here's the new pen, everybody. We just finished it, passed all the tests. Go market it. And I go, what's so great about this new pen? Looks like the old pen. What's different about it? Help me understand. And so now we're shotgunning a go-to-market because leadership is saying, the pen's ready. Why aren't we selling it? Why don't I see it on LinkedIn? Why aren't there advertisements for it? Et cetera, et cetera. And I say, I just found out about it yesterday. And the answer is as early as possible. That knowledge transfer, we'll call it, needs to happen as soon as possible, to the point of, at a prior job, we would actually take product marketing on the road with us when we're doing customer research early on. What are the problems that we're trying to solve? Have product marketing there. And what happens is that messaging, that positioning, that go-to-market strategy happens throughout the process. And you bring people along for the ride. So the day the pen is done in engineering, you might actually be able to launch it that day too and have a successful launch, as opposed to like, well, now let's start a 3-month effort to get this thing in Staples and on Amazon.com and however else we want to do it. That's my recommendation. Oh, we got another question from Jessica McLean again. When talking about project management, is it just assumed that all product managers are project managers? No. I think that product managers need to think like project managers in the sense of planning and communicating. But I also think that they can overstep because they've got more to do than just crack the whip on things being done, right? And what you'll see is like companies will hire what's called like a new product introduction project manager to help get the organization in step. Product manager says, here's what product does. Implementation team, are you ready to do it? Like, let me train you, let me help you understand it, but you have your own work to do. And I can't be the one cracking the whip on that all the time. So there's a good interplay between the two that I think happens. So it's a skill set, but it's not a function, in my opinion. And I think most people would agree with that. Okay, Sarah Mitchell says, which role would you recommend owns the win-loss analysis? Well, I think the answer is it depends. I think both. Well, can two people own it? No, they can't. I think two would be interested in the output of it. So typically, it's interesting. My manager said to me the other day, we got such and such going on. I was talking, the product team's actually, for this one product, the product team's almost too involved in the commercial activities, to where our head of sales said, I don't talk to product managers, I talk to Nate, product marketing. And so that doesn't mean we should be siloed. And that doesn't mean people shouldn't be involved in the commercial aspects of the world. But I do believe in a firm stream of communication to the sales team, which creates a nice stream of communication back from the sales team. So it's a good interplay there. When it comes to win-loss, because in product marketing, I'm where I'm at. Now, in other companies, it might be different. I'm so involved in like every customer opportunity, not everyone, but a lot of them. How are we positioned for this one? We know what our general positioning is, but how do we position for this specific one? What message do we want to deliver, right? Can you help me build this special presentation for this? Sure. Like, I'm so close to those discussions that it seems most appropriate for product marketing where I'm at to drive the win-loss, to own the win-loss analysis. And then, as always, communicate that to the organization and say, look, this is something we can fix in messaging. This is something we should look at in sales strategy. This is something we should look at from a product perspective. So that's my 2 cents. Tanya Edmonds says, how can you effectively do both product management plus product marketing? What tools, tips, or advice do you have? Well, so it's interesting. There are organizations where the product manager does the go-to-market planning, right? And so the advice I would have is you should plan and you should communicate, but that's kind of like a lame answer. I think in those organizations, like that breadth actually becomes difficult for someone to take on. And I think what ends up happening is the best advice I can give is to almost understand where you can best make an impact and where you need help, right? So looking at the pragmatic framework, because I just keep talking about it because I just love it so much. There's boxes where, let's just say, I mean, holy cow, are you responsible for everything on that box, right? But then think about it from a racy perspective. Who's responsible, but who's accountable? And so can you have your Marcom people or your lead gen people maybe take on a little bit more of the day-to-day of the go-to-market under your supervision, right? Can you get your analyst to think a little bit more, a little higher level about the requirements as opposed to just kind of like in the details of the requirements? So how can you, it isn't about a reporting structure, but how can you best leverage the team that you have to be able to do it effectively? And it really goes back to, I don't know, whatever, I can still have my slides here, don't I? It really goes down to this question here of who has the skill and competency to do the work that's needed done? So where are you best and how can you leverage others to have a good team that ultimately takes its product to market? Because it's not solely on you. You're the leader of that team. You're a leader. You're the CEO of the product. I don't know. But you are the one who, if we go back to this one, if you're doing both functions, your job is to bring life-changing products to market. You will not do it on your own. So how do you leverage those around you to effectively do it? So that's my answer to that one. We're actually 7 minutes over. I might be talking to myself at this point. I don't know if anyone's still around. If there's more questions, we can take them. Otherwise, Tanuja, I think we're done here. We had we started late, and I apologize for that, but we did it. Hopefully this was eye-opening to all of you, and you learned a little bit about the differences and the similarities between the two and what that might mean for your career. So thank you all for your attention. If you have any questions, I think you can hit me up on the outside back in the event. So thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Nathan. It's a great session. Have a good one.
I paid you to say that.
You did. Okay, thank you, everyone.